Okay, here's our selector, getUnresolvedBugs. Now, what is a selector? It's a function that takes the state of the store and returns the unresolved bugs. Now, here we're using the createSelector function to create the selector. And the whole reason for doing this is to create a memoized selector. We talked about this earlier in the course. But we could also implement this selector without using this function. So we would implement it like this. getUnresolvedBugs equals, we set it to a function that takes the state and returns the unresolved bugs, okay? So don't let the syntax confuse you. The output of this function is going to be a function with this signature. So to test this function, all we have to do is to call it, give it the state of the store, and then look at the result. Let me show you. So delete this. In our test file, we have a group for the bug slice. Inside this group, we have two tests. Now, after the second test, I'm going to define a new group for our selectors. So we're going to write all the tests for our selectors inside this group. Let's create a new test for the getUnresolvedBugs selector. Now here we need to call our selector. So let's import it on the top. Over here, we're going to import it. Good. Now, back to our test. We're going to call getUnresolvedBugs. Here we should give it the state of the store. So our store is an object with these properties: entities, bugs, and here we have a property called list, which is an array of bug objects. So let's add a few objects here. Here's one object. Let's duplicate it. Now we have 3 bug objects. I'm going to resolve the first bug. So resolved is true. Now, what about the description property? Well, we don't care about that in this test. So always use simple objects that allow you to test your code. Don't pollute your tests with complex objects with a lot of values. In this case, we don't really care about the description of our bugs. All we care about is a list of bugs where some of these bugs are resolved. So when we call this selector, we should get an array with 2 items. Those items are going to be these objects over here, okay? So let's store the result over here and then make an assertion. So we expect the result to have length of 2, okay? Let's run our tests. Suggest. All right, we have a failing test. Take a look. We have an error on this line. Bugs.filter is not a function. So earlier when we restructured the bug slice, I forgot to change this expression. So bugs used to be an array, now it's an object. Objects don't have a filter method. So we need to change this to bugs.list. See, this is another benefit of writing tests. These tests help us catch bugs before deploying our application into production. They give us rapid feedback about the quality of our application, okay? So let's run our test again. All tests passing, beautiful. So here's our new test. It's fairly clean, it's readable, it's maintainable, but we can make it better. Look at this object structure over here. It's possible that we're going to have multiple tests in this file, and in each test, we probably have to repeat this object structure. That is unnecessary and adds clutter to our code. So I'm going to create a helper function for creating this object structure. So on the top, so earlier we created this helper function, bug slice. Now let's create another helper function. So const create state. This is a function that returns an object with the structure. Entities, bugs, list, which is an empty array. So this function gives us an empty array. Then we have the flexibility to decide what we want to put in this array in each test, okay? Also, the reason I implement this as a function and not an object is that I want each test to start from a clean state. We don't want the changes by one test to impact other tests. So every test should start from a fresh, clean state, okay? So now that we have this helper function, let's use it in our new test. So over here, first I'm going to call create state. Then I'm going to set state.entities.bugs.list to this array over here. Let's cut this, put it over here. Now, we don't need to pass this object structure with all these curly braces. It's ugly. We only pass the state. Also, we can apply the AAA pattern here. Remember, AAA, arrange, act, assert. So the first two lines are the arrange part because they're part of the initialization. So we separate them from the third line. The third line is the act, and the fourth line is the assertion. So let's save the changes. That is the end result, which is really clean and readable.